Alright fellas, as promised, I'm going to attempt to make a few videos on how to do some basic things on your GBody style cars. First series of videos, I'm going to attempt to show how to do a very simple kick panel using the factory piece, the factory lower kick panel piece. This happens to be a passenger side where the computer would normally go, and you're going to have to relocate that if you have your factory computer stuff, and you're just going to use this kick panel as a base. Like I said, I'm going to show basic ways to do it. I do have more tools that are probably not common to the regular or normal person who doesn't do a lot of woodwork. I just picked up another router. That's a plunge router and a jig for making circles. This particular jig is called the perfect circle. Like I said, I like having stuff like that are specific to doing what I need to do, because I do a lot of this type of stuff. I haven't done it in a while, so I'm kind of trying to get back into a good rhythm with some of my technique and stuff like that. Hopefully I can show you guys how to do some of this at home. I'm at home doing this in my garage, and you can do this with some basic tools. You don't have to use a plunge router. You can use a regular jigsaw. You can use whatever you want to use to cut your circles and do all that kind of stuff. The plunge router does make it a lot easier, a lot cleaner to flush in your speakers and stuff like that. So that's what I have. But again, whatever you have to make your circles, to cut your holes and do all that kind of stuff, it's perfectly fine. I basically just want to show how I do it. Hopefully the way that you see me do it in the video will help you out, and hopefully it comes out looking decent. This is just an introduction. I'm going to try to get going at a good pace and try to see a project through. I'll start off with some of the basic tools. I have a plunge router. I do have another router. This one I bought specifically to do some of this stuff, so I got a pretty big project coming up. So I'm going to get some practice in. This is a spiral cutting bit. It's a 1/4 inch. I don't know if you can see that. Basically going to be using some wood I have laying around. For these kick panels, you can use a 1/2 inch or 5/8 or whatever MDF you want to. You don't have to use 3/4. I just like using the 3/4 inch MDF because I can flush the speaker in, including the grill. So I'm using 3/4 inch MDF. There's one of the factory passenger side lower kick panels where the computer used to be. This is called a perfect circle jig. There are other jigs that are cheaper if you want one. One of them is the Jasper J200, I think. That's a pretty good one. I just like this one because it's all metal and it seems like it's going to last for quite a while. You just need a basic drill. Whatever speaker you're going to use, this happens to be a speaker I'm going to use for my son's car, one of them. There's going to be two sets of 6.5s and tweeters up front. One set's going to go in the kick panel. So one thing you want to do is make sure that wherever you're going to mount these, that you have enough room in that area, basically enough room to shut the door without interference, and also take into consideration how far it's going to stick out. I already know I have plenty of clearance. I already checked that out, and I'll show that again once we get started. You can pick speakers that have a shallower mounting depth, which is a lot better for this type of thing, so that way you don't have to build your ring up too high. I'm going to set this perfect circle jig onto my router and hopefully make a few cuts. Get one of these rings made and show how that's done. Also, before you start doing any of this woodworking stuff, the sawdust from using a router or sometimes a jigsaw, it's going to get everywhere and all over the place. So if you have anything laying around that you want to protect, I basically just covered up everything that I don't want dust to get inside. Here's a 4/9 inch. So just make sure you protect whatever you want to protect, and then get going with the project. But when you're using a router with this type of bit, sawdust goes everywhere and it's going to get on everything. So just be mindful of that and cover up things that you care about getting dust on or in. Normally your router is going to come with some sort of guide plate on it, so I'm just removing the screws so that I can put the circle jig on it. So you can make something like this yourself, but I didn't mind spending the money on it. It's made out of metal, I think aluminum, I'm not sure, but for the router that I have, it doesn't really fit. The holes are a little bit further in, so basically I just took the top plate off of here that has the mounting holes already on it, kind of centered it up on this, and then mark my holes. So I'm just going to re-drill my own holes, and hopefully it fits on there real well. I got my new holes drilled and a little countersunk for the screws to go through. So I'm going to get that attached back on the router and start cutting. This video isn't for the person who knows how to do this stuff or thinks they're an expert or any of that. A couple of personal friends of mine and friends on YouTube asked me to do some of the other stuff I know how to do or can do. One of those things are making kick panels and small projects, subwoofer boxes, dashes, and all kind of little stuff like that. So this video is for them. They asked me to do it. I'm going to do my best in instructing you on how I did it, or at least showing you how I did it. I'm not saying I'm the best or even great at this stuff, but I'm decent. So if something I say or do doesn't make sense to you, please send me a message or send me a comment asking me to elaborate on it or whatever, and I'll try to do a whole nother video, even if I have to cut new rings or whatever I got to do. I'm willing to do that for you. I already attached my jig here to the router. I showed in the other video I had to actually drill some new holes to get that to mount, but that was fairly easy to do. The next thing I did was drill my pilot hole for the for this pin right here to sink into. It's very difficult to measure the distance between this pin here and as you start making your cuts. Basically where that router bit, either the outer or inner edge of the router bit, it's difficult to set this up the proper way. It's much easier, as I learned in another video on YouTube, to just drill your pilot hole so that you can stick the pin and router into that and then measure out. So basically I found the center of this piece of scrap wood I have. I drilled my pilot hole with I believe an 1/8 inch bit, which is what calls for that circle jig. And now I measure out half the distance that I need to cut out. So I drew this in to help explain what I'm trying to do. But basically from here, from the center of this hole out, I measured, and for me, I needed a total, I think, of 5 15/16 to be perfect to mount my speaker into that, to be able to mount into this ring. My next dimension, I measured the distance I wanted from how thick I wanted this ring to be. And I've already actually cut one. I'm going to be redoing 2 of them. But I cut one to make this easier to explain. Basically, this would be the center. This will be that first cut that I'm talking about. You need half the distance from here to here to do the full cut. And that measurement was right there for my speaker. Your speaker is going to be different. And that'll give you this first cut, the inner. Basically, to do this distance here, I measured out what I needed. And from the center to the outside of that, for my case, would be this measurement here. I mark an X to indicate that I'm going to put the router bit, basically I'm going to cut outside this line here, and I'm going to cut inside this line here. I also have an area countersunk in. This basically isn't going to fit. There's going to be, I needed a little bit of room in between this, and that's to compensate for any type of material if I'm going to be wrapping this, or I'm actually going to come into this ring, I think, and apply my fleece or whatever, t-shirt, whatever I use, to the inner circle. So once I build the material up a little bit, that'll actually still sit real flush and nice in there. So I allowed probably about 1/8 of an inch more than what I needed for this ring to fit perfectly inside the center. And then the distance from here to here is about 1/4 inch. So after I marked the outside diameter, which would be this mark here, I went in 1/4 inch and made my mark there. Hope that made sense. I'm not going to be able to film a lot of the cutting because it's also difficult to do this with one hand. So like I said, if you have any questions, please ask. I'm not an expert at this stuff at all. I just know how to do a whole lot of little stuff, and I just try my best. So I learn a lot by watching people like Gasser Glass, Go Fast Fiberglass. Actually, I learned the most as far as the resin type to use and all that stuff from him, and he does a great job. He's got excellent quality parts. I'm looking forward to buying some of his stuff in the future. In the meantime, I'm doing stuff specific to my project, which is my son's Elko here. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to do in the very near future is going to be related to that, to help some of the guys with these type of cars do stuff specific to their car. On a side note, I just got a very cool magnet from a friend of mine on YouTube. His name is Rob. It's Ross D. Formetta. He's got a badass 68 Firebird. It's one of my favorite cars. He's doing everything at his house, in home, no shop allowed kind of thing. He's doing a great job, and he's showing people how he gets down as far as all the fabrication and all the body work and the painting and stuff like that. So please check out his channel, Ross D. Formetta. And he sent me this real nice magnetic sticker here. Also, I think I went a little bit more than 1/4 inch down with countersinking this. So I'll try to show how to do all that. So again, I'm not a professional at this stuff. I just do a lot of little projects. I like doing stuff at home and learning as I go along. So if I make any mistakes, oh well, this is how I do stuff. And this video is actually specifically for the people that asked me to do it. So if you don't like it, make your own video, show how you do it, and then send me the link, and I'll take a look at it and let everybody know about it. All right? Okay. Before you start cutting, make sure that, like I said in the earlier clip, that you protect the stuff around you. That's the next part of this process. You're gonna want to. This is kind of a small piece of board. Normally, I would clamp the board down to keep it from moving too much. I don't think you have to. However, I'm gonna go ahead and put a couple nails in just the outer corners. Keep the board from moving on me. What I did was I stuck the pin into the middle of the hole, and I loosened this up and positioned it correctly to cut my first cut. And basically, when you set this down on the board, you want to make sure that the outside of this router bit is positioned correctly, so that you don't cut, so that you're cutting 1/4 inch in the inside here, if that makes sense. If you put this on the wrong side, it's going to cut the hole too big. So that's pretty much right where I want it. And the next step is I'm going to set my router depth. Okay, as I'm making my cuts with the router, I usually just go about 1/4 inch at a time. And this is the part I'm trying to countersink. So I got one more cut left, which is this little bit here. I'm going to cut down 1/8 of an inch and then 1/4 of an inch, and it'll be down as flat as I want it to be. Then I'll make a final cut on the outer diameter of the ring, which will be about 1/4 inch from this point to here. And then I got to cut the center all the way out, and the first ring will be done. Alright, and here's the other ring all cut up. If I want to, I could just sand it down a little bit where I got to the end of the cut. It just pretty much broke off. The ring is countersunk a little bit more than 1/4 inch, just because I wanted it to sit down a little bit further. It's about half the thickness of the wood. So the 2 rings are cut off, and I'll be going on to the next step shortly.